Hi, everybody. Welcome to the second hour of the Santita Jackson Show on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. It's a joy to be with you today. I want you to meet my friends, the Morning Stars, the Santita Jackson Morning Stars on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Like and subscribe. Like and subscribe. Click the bell. Everybody like the show right now and pass it on. Share it with at least one person. Please, please click that bell. Click that bell so that whenever we come up, you will be notified. But I want everyone to like and share the show right now. Please like and share. And then, of course, on the Santita Jackson and Friends Facebook page where we are streaming, everybody share, 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 share. Please share. And then, of course, I'm on Twitter at Santita J. So I want to be with you. I want to be with you, and I want us to continue to build this wonderful community that we have, that we've been building. It's what a blessing it is to be with you every day. It is my sincere privilege. I hope you know this, to be with you. And thank you for opening your mind and your hearts to me and this wonderful family that we have built in Radio Land and virtually. It's been a blessing. Pastor Marshall Hatch, Reverend Dr. Marshall Hatch, brilliant theologian and pastor, New Mount Pilgrim Missionary Baptist Church here in Chicago. Of course, the Ma'afa Project is yours, and your dean I have here, Dwight McKee, senior advisor to Cornel West, Dr. Cornel West in his presidential campaign, and of course, Josh Feinstein, Jewish Voices for Peace, Action, Michigan. They had that tremendous victory that kicked off a movement in the United States. I mean, imagine 21 days, Pastor Hatch, Dwight McKee. They said, if we just get 10,000 votes, we will have made our point. They got 101,000 votes in 21 days. And they kicked off something. 19% of the vote in Minneapolis went to uncommitted. They got 12,000 Republicans and 48,000 Democrats in Wisconsin. More than 500,000 voters across the country are looking for another way. Another way. And now the news reports, Dwight, they're coming out that more and more, before we get into the Trump story, there are more and more people who are planning to come to Chicago to express dissent. Does that surprise you, Dwight McKee?
Not at all. And what you're seeing today is a precursor to what Chicago is going to look like.
What do you mean?
They're closing down bridges all over the country. They closed down San Francisco. They closed down New York. They closed down San Antonio. They're closing bridges and roads down. They're doing major demonstrations all over the country today. And the Golden Gate Bridge has been closed down since early this morning. People can't get off. They're even taking porta potties down there so the people can use the bathroom because they have no way to get off the bridge. And so that is going to be a precursor to what's going to be happening in Chicago during the Democratic National Convention, and probably what may end up happening up the road at the Republican Convention in Milwaukee. And so this anti-war movement is going to take on a personality unto itself.
Josh, you were nodding your head vigorously in assent. What resonates with you about what Dwight just said?
It's rather trite. I was thinking, better book my hotel and flight. It's going to be cost.
Didn't I?
It's going to be cost prohibitive.
So, look, you and your wife can stay with me in between
that's so
my
sweet.
clothing racks in my guest room. You can come and stay. Because Dwight, you have to let them know how the Jacksons function. We just, if you can get to our homes, you can find a place to sleep. Just find a place.
Very sweet.
That's what we do.
Well, again, I just think about what you said a week or two ago about pageantry inside, protest outside. It will be intense. And I think the other thing is what we see today on tax day. This is not a one and done. What we can see between people voting uncommitted or uninstructed and the regular volley of protests. Everyone thought, first we weren't allowed to say anything. And then eventually people began to speak out. And then they thought, well, it'll die out in a month or two or three, and then we'll continue on with what we're doing. And as you can see, just the opposite is happening. There's still, the enthusiasm continues to build and the momentum continues to build. So I think that we can see these rolling I don't want to use the word disruptive, these rolling constructive acts of civil disobedience, we will continue to see them happen for the foreseeable future. Reverend, would you agree or disagree with my assertion?
I would agree. And the expressway to O'Hare Field was shut down today, by the way, as well. So all the airport traffic was disrupted. This is 1968 on steroids emerging. Chicago is going to be an epicenter for protest. Chicago already is really in the center of the country and is easily accessible from all directions, which is why it had become a convention capital, which is why, the 1968 protests were so volatile and such a magnet for folk coming literally from all over the country. This time it will be from all over the world. And I've been in a few of the meetings. I've been very surprised as to how I think unprepared, the political class may be for what is really organic and really emerging from underneath. It is going to be very unpredictable. Those of us in Chicago know Chicago is very hot in the summertime in every way.
Well, when you say that you're surprised by their unawareness, I mean, because I think that's what hubris breeds, right?
Yeah.
You think, oh, this would not happen. They wouldn't dare. What are you seeing in these meetings, Pastor Hatch?
Well, I was in a meeting recently, and I think we were like 45 minutes into the meeting, and I'm thinking to myself, when is the elephant in the room going to be addressed? Not just economic opportunities for people in the community, for small businesses. It's like La La Land. And then finally, when, I broke the ice and mentioned, by the way, this is going to be the epicenter of political protests from around the world, then it opened up a floodgates to, people having some semblance of a conversation about what may happen. But I was just really surprised that, that I had to bring it up. And I don't know. I think hubris is a good way, a lens through which to see that it's almost like as if people want to, bury their heads in the sand and hope it goes away. But I used the word in the meeting that I thought was appropriate. I say, you do know a catastrophe is emerging. It's going to be catastrophic in Chicago. If there's, well, I don't know what they could do now. I thought it would need a major shift in policy on the part of the Biden administration. I'm surprised at how naive and how effectively the Netanyahu administration is able to sort of jerk the Biden administration around, because obviously Netanyahu is playing for the other team. I mean, he's really working for a Trump presidency. And I just don't understand how the White House can allow itself and allow the country to be used without having a proactive strategy of its own in terms of its policy.
Well, I don't know if he's working for a Trump presidency, because he too, he rolls up on every president, Democrat and Republican, the same way. It's the same kind of arrogance. Like, I mean, even I was reading an account of the Obama presidency. They say he walked in the White House like he owned the place, and he behaves that way. And that is not, because I mean, even with Trump, on one level, he's such a maverick, and he's more of a maverick, I think, than we know,
and a fellow criminal.
Well, I mean, but all these guys, I mean, there's just so much mess out in this.
Respectfully, Santita, the term maverick implies a romantic element, though. When you think of a
but we romanticized this. I think that's why we've not protested it.
Interesting.
I mean, because he's on TV, everything, and Biden, when he came out to run for president, he looked younger. Let's put it that way. I mean, this is how we do
Magic of
things.
television.
Imaging.
Yeah.
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 One thing the Reverend said, which sticks with me, is I don't do whatever's going on in Washington. There clearly is some sort of echo chamber that the current administration lives in, because they get clear signs and they get hit on the top of the head that even if you have no morals, look at whatever strategy you got going is clearly not working. And they're clearly not listening to they're not looking at the data. Never mind, what their heart tells them. Forget that. There is some type of echo chamber there, because they're getting clear signs that in terms of working for a Trump presidency, I would say the Biden administration is working overtime to make that happen. And I'm really befuddled that they are not aware that the moves that they do are gearing towards that. Does anyone agree or disagree with me on that?
I agree with you wholeheartedly.
Well, I think he walks in the White House like he owns it, because he does.
Yeah.
Is that the money from the Jewish constituency is really a profound sense of a profound amount in proportion to the other money that they get. But it's money with a constituency and a lobby that makes demand for the money that they give. And so I think that the Democratic Party really feels that they're lockstep in with Israel, and they don't have a real alternative but to do the bidding of Israel. And if you look at the attitude of Netanyahu, that's how he feels too, because he operates with impunity and then demand that they follow his lead. I mean, so he virtually has the United States fighting his wars.
But I think there was an opportunity for Biden to isolate Netanyahu, because at one point when Netanyahu obviously was very unpopular and maybe has had some rebounds since the Iranian retaliation, but Biden was more popular than Netanyahu in Israel. And it was almost like the perfect timing for him to do what Netanyahu had done to Obama. Biden could have gotten invited to speak in Israel without Netanyahu's permission, and it could have been masterful. But I just don't think they had the kind of courage, the kind of vision, to have that kind of agency to go forward with their own vision of what they were trying to accomplish in terms of the policy in the Middle East.
I don't think Netanyahu is the issue for Biden. I think AIPAC is the issue for Biden. I think that Netanyahu is hiding behind AIPAC, and AIPAC has all the power when it comes to dealing with Biden. Now, I don't know whether or not how much of it is personal or how much is their influence on the Democratic Party, but I think that he is subjected to whatever AIPAC tells him to do, and AIPAC seemed to be behind Netanyahu on this.
Well,
but it's still politics. It's still politics.
I think we're beginning to see things about the system that we have not, that people whispered about. Josh, Pastor Hatch, Dwight. Now the quiet part is being said out loud. The question is now, what do we do? Because even now, the way they're framing the Iranian response to the killings of their generals and the bombing of their consulate is being framed in the United States as an attack upon Israel. I'm like, no, it's a retaliatory move. And I do agree, I do believe that if they wanted to kill people, they could have done that. They did not. I mean, of course, whenever you shoot, that you can do that. But these people, they know about the Iron Dome. They knew those rockets or whatever they were firing off was not going to get through. They knew that.
I think they called ahead of time, Santita.
They've been saying it for
these are
2
the
weeks.
rockets you need to intercept.
They've been saying it
Yeah,
for weeks.
yeah,
And it's going to be on Saturday. I mean, come on, you guys. I
yeah.
mean, I was like, what? Where's the element of surprise here? You all keep saying every day this is happening, this is coming, and then right on time it happened. But even that is a factor. And I mean, even as we're looking at Trump, all of these are factors. I mean, I see all this stuff whirling about at the same time. Like the old Ed Sullivan show when they would spin the plates on the on the sticks, and they were trying to keep them spinning at the same time. There's a lot going on, and there's a lot that I think Americans are trying to make sense of. And now we have a presumptive nominee who is facing what charges that to me sound really light, but he could become a convicted felon because they amped it up. It was not supposed to be a felony, but now it is a felony. And for something that, quite frankly, I don't know any man who is married or attached in a relationship who would want his wife or girlfriend to know that he had been fooling around. I mean, I'm not making excuses. I'm just saying I'm trying to figure out what's going on here. Because now when you see all of these highways blocked up, there's something going on out here. When didn't Trump say today was going to be wild? Do you think, Dwight, is that what you when you see the bridges blocked and all that, is that what you're seeing? Do you think this is a reaction to Trump?
No.
What do you think this is?
This is a reaction to what's going on in Israel. This has to do with the war. This has nothing to do with Trump. Trump had a little protest in Manhattan. They had some truck drivers come in and stop some traffic.
Mm-hmm.
But this is way beyond Trump. If there was no Trump, they would still be closing down these bridges. I see you shot nodding your head, Josh. Go ahead.
Yeah, this has nothing to do with Trump.
Mm-hmm.
Again, Trump continues to be very successful as making his sideshow attraction to put himself center stage. Mm-hmm. By the way, typically not a fan of his. Typically, that's quite almost brilliant of him to say, and they're out there all protesting for me today. I mean, nothing to do with him. This is about what's going on in Gaza and the world saying it is not right. I mean, this is, but again, hats off to Trump to not only thinking it's about himself, but successfully getting some people to think it's about him. That's in where he's always been successful.
So do you think, well, let me ask you this, Josh, to interrupt.
Yes.
But because now you see the White House, they said, look, they really tried to take the sting off of, they're trying to, I think, lay out the justification for Israel to attack Iran. That they did mean to kill Israelis, and this was far worse than and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And this was an attack upon Israel. No one's talking about the retaliatory aspects of this, that this was a retaliation. And mind you, my tradition says turn the other cheek. I get it. But this was a retaliation. That's what it is. And I see them like laying a foundation, at least on the corporate side and on the White House side, for Israel attacking Iran. I just see a big mess.
It's definitely a risk and a possibility. But again, that's where we come into Reverend Hatch's thing about the echo chamber of the Biden administration, that actually doesn't play out well for humankind, but also for the Biden administration. When we think about what's transpired in Iran, yes, the establishment keeps on saying, well, this, blah, blah, but the fact of the matter is there's an entire segment of population, the young people in this country are not listening to the establishment say, well, this is that. They're going on TikTok and they're going on social media, and on there, they're having people tell them, here's what I believe. And it doesn't match up with what the normal line is. And again, I do want to reiterate just I can only talk about from my own personal experience. Mm-hmm. I don't think it is controversial for me to say that as a Jewish American who spends time in New York and spends time in Beirut, I actually feel safer today than I did a couple of days ago. Why? because as I plan to go to Beirut to be with family,
Mhm.
live in an area where where we have all different types of neighbors around. The last time I was there, the Israelis fired a drone missile past our apartment house. They intentionally hit the building down from us and killed people. And then follow on that, the attack, like you said, the attack on sovereign soil in Syria. I mean, because again, Lebanon's sovereign nation, Syria's sovereign nation, and the Israelis felt like, okay, we can do whatever we want. And it's been this way for a long time. And what's happening is they continue to push the envelope, push the envelope. I don't condone what the Iranians did. I'm glad no one got injured or hurt. But I will say that what the Iranians' intention to send a message is that you keep on infringing on territorial soil that is not yours, thinking that you can go wherever you want. I, as someone who will be staying in an embassy area near there, I feel a little bit safer today that the Israelis will think twice before shooting missiles and rockets near where I'm going to stay. And again, that's a very personal point of view.
Yeah.
But the
But
point
you've been there, right?
yeah, yes, I'm saying from actually being there myself and being there. This is one point of view from one person, but I'm sort of not alone here. This is me saying this, but there is a whole swath of the American public that believes that, yeah, what we're hearing from the government does not match up with reality. The reality is that Israel is the victimizer. Israel is the aggressor. And you cannot continue to weaponize anti-Semitism to then commit atrocities against other people. Because every time Israel does that, at the end of the day, they're making Jews unsafe. And what Iran did is sent a message saying that you cannot continue to impose your will and murder and assassinate at will. And that's what they said. And I do think that it was, to your point, intentional that they broadcasted that here's what we're doing. We're sending these amounts of drones, and they slow rolled it. And then, and they sent, they spent what, a couple of $1 million on the attack. We spent $1.3 billion that night of our money. Your money, Reverend, your money, Santita, your money, Dwight, my money. And I'm glad that we were able to protect human life. But if the Israeli government would stop being the aggressor, we could take that money, the 1.3 billion that we spent in one night, we could bring it home here and work on actually giving people here education, housing. I go on and on and on. So I feel pretty passionate about it. But again, at the end of the day, in terms of the geopolitics of it, I think that this is not a geopolitical comment I'm making. I'm talking about from a personal point of view. I hope that makes sense.
It does. I mean, so the bigger story today for you is what's happening. Well, I mean, what's the bigger story? Is it the Trump trial and the impact that it could have on the 2024 election, or what could be happening with Iran? I mean,
I view the Trump trial as a distraction. I view the man is a masterful at making himself the center of attention. We're on the verge of World War III, and yet he's the main story of the day. Hats off to him in terms of, and again, I am not a fan of him, but I really marvel at his ability to figure out the pulse and keep himself, quote, relevant. The bread and circus of the man is quite interesting.
Well, but I don't think you have to be a fan. And I don't hope that's not what I am giving you, because I'm not a fan. But you don't hate the player, you hate the game. You've got to appreciate someone who's got skills with a Z, someone who's remained relevant to the American public for a decade, then 2, then 3, then 4, and you're not a nostalgia act, then 5. You got to look at them and figure out how has Mick Jagger stayed on the front row for 50 years. There's some people, you look at them because they're not that many who, Michael Jackson was not a nostalgia act when he died. There's some people who resonate, who when they walk in the room, Muhammad Ali made the room stop until he died, right?
To mention the great Muhammad Ali in the same sentence as Donald Trump diminishes Muhammad Ali.
No, it doesn't. No.
Let me expand. I may defend, because what you're talking about is relevance in terms of people's attention. Yeah. I think when we leave this earth, in terms of how we're remembered, it's more about what actual impact do we have for the good towards this world. Okay, Muhammad Ali he left the world a better place than he
Yeah.
found it. Okay. I don't believe that Donald Trump will be able to have that as his legacy, that he left the world a better place. And therefore, it's bread and circus, it's entertainment.
But see, but don't get me wrong, because
Yes.
see, Muhammad Ali was my family's friend when no one liked him.
If,
Because we've been the outliers.
yes.
Because look, Reverend, when he ran for president, he was the outlier.
Yeah.
And he was the first candidate to get his Secret Service protection so early. Because he too was hated in America. I grew up with that. My brother had to be sent to boarding school at the age of 10. My parents didn't want to send their child away, and they couldn't afford to do it. But they couldn't afford to let his namesake stay in Chicago. Because my father was hated in this town.
Wow.
And they had to send him away. Then I read the Riot Act because of my parent at my Harvard interview. I'm a merit scholar. These people have called me. I read the Riot Act. My mother knew that it was going to be a hostile interview and she wanted to take me. But she knew how my parents hemorrhaged Jewish support because they said, we want Jewish security and Palestinian justice. We almost lost our lives over that. So before Muhammad Ali ended up moving into his mansion, he lived in a little apartment about 5 minutes away from me. Because he was hated in America. So I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about how has this man been able to resonate? I'm just looking, because when you get into a room with people like that, wherever they stand politically, Joshua, they will talk to each other. Reverend knows Donald Trump. Doesn't agree with him on his politics, but when you get in the arena, there is a respect that people have for each other because you know what it takes to be here. That's what my brother Jonathan says about Congress. He said we're all over the spectrum ideologically, but because you went through the same meat grinder to get here, there's a certain amount of a healthy respect, even when you don't agree, which is why one of the first things he did when he got on the floor, he walked across the aisle and said hello to Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Wow.
And Lawrence, yeah, all of them, they're not ogres, they're just people. They knew who he was. Hey, how you doing? It's good to meet you. Boom. And it did a reset on the relationship. And I guess what I'm trying to find out is with all that we have going on here, because this circus is on TV, if you turn on your television, you know, you have a description of what's going on today. It's not the news, it's the Trump trial across all the platforms. Not poverty, not even what's happening in Iran. That's not even, like you said, at the very least, we're on the verge of a huge regional conflict that will change our gas prices. This is a mess. We're not even talking about the implications of that. We've got the White House propagandizing us, playing these games. It's like, y'all, wait a minute. Who is going to come up with a peace solution? When my brother Jonathan mentions peace in these meetings in Congress, he says there's a chill that falls over the room. People look at him like he's nuts.
Sorry, I didn't mean to laugh.
No, you can laugh, but it's like you tell me no one.
What about lucrative military contracts?
No one's talking to Putin. He said, wait, come on now. I've been in the room. We know people back channel. Y'all don't want to have some peace so we can end this thing with Ukraine. It's costing us too much money. And too many people are dying. You know what? I just feel like we're being played here, Josh, and Pastor Hatch and Dwight. I look at TV, I feel like we're being played, and people are hurting in America. Folks cannot. They're apportioning their insulin. They're dying. Our mortality rate for women from white to the bluest of black is the highest in the industrial world. It's unsafe to have a child in America today, to have a baby. You can't buy a house. You can't. University of Chicago is $100,000 a year. Who can do that? Help me. I'm just saying that. And I'm just trying to figure out with Trump, why is Trump's Pastor Hatch, because you're talking to these kids, you're talking to these people, why is his appeal growing in the black community? Pastor Hatch?
Well, the entire electorate is challenged, in terms of the seriousness with which people approach politics. I mean, we've been dummied down. I mean, the fact that Trump is even a contender. I mean, let's just face it. Trump probably is going to find a way to get political benefit from this trial, because the charges aren't really that serious, by the way. They're not going to prevent him from taking office if he wins, even if he loses the case. So it's even if he's a felon, it's an obvious yes. It might help him. It might help him make the case that he's persecuted. That he makes the case that he's persecuted, or that he appeals to black males who've been criminalized, that he's one of them, that he's a victim of the same system. It's that kind of political games that is what happens when an electorate is not informed. But I think Joshua's point about where young people are getting their news, because I'm gonna tell you something that's very interesting. Even when the ceasefire vote was taken here in Chicago, the high schoolers were walking out. So it wasn't just the college kids who had some political consciousness, but it was the high schoolers who were getting a lot of information from TikTok. And so, there's a case that can be made that when you look generationally, there is some hope. As a pastor, I'm just very disturbed that even if I just call for peace, that it becomes risky. I mean, that's how demoralized humanity has become. As we do march into World War III, everybody's arming for it. And as we prepare for potential civil war in America, that everybody's arming for. These are very dangerous times. I was impressed a lot with Michelle Alexander's article she had in The Nation just a month or so ago. And I guess she was musing about Dr. King and that great life that is as relevant in this 21st century as it was in the 20th. And her assertion was only revolutionary love can help us now. I mean, let's just face it. I mean, Iran's retaliation, I'm not making any excuse for anybody, but in the context of international relations, it was measured, it was responsible. In the world where you have to do something, I mean, you really just got to do something. That's the nature of geopolitics. And I think Biden tried to ratchet down the Netanyahu administration by saying, "Look how successful the dome has been." It was totally ineffective missile attacks. I think it was designed to not be effective in terms of killing people, but it was restraint, which is the way the rest of the world is looking at this. But again, if America allows itself to be used to escalate the conflict in the region, I mean, we lose even more moral authority than we've already lost, and it just becomes an incredible tragedy to literally allow the military industrial complex to really lead the whole nation into hell and possibly the world with it. So we really need some sober thinking, and we need some real vision. I don't know how we get to the Biden administration. You may have some ideas on that, but they are totally being misused and allowing the country to be misused. And as Josh was saying, I have a lot of relationships with a lot of different kind of people, a lot of Jewish friends, and my heart aches because, you know, it just, it exposes Jewish people all over the planet to a kind of isolation that's just not, it's not going to have a good outcome
I
if we
mean,
don't rest it where this is going.
and I mean, I know so many Jewish people are not with this.
Right.
I know some who are, but I know some, I mean, we got Clarence Thomas. I don't know what else I can tell you. I mean,
Yeah.
you have people who are all over the place, but this is in the and I don't understand how Benjamin Netanyahu and that ilk. I don't know how so many people in Israel say get the hostages back, but keep on with the war. I mean, I'm like you all. This is none of this is working, and this is isolating you.
Yeah.
And that is what is frightening. It is frightening, Josh, to see people getting isolated, and demonized. You
Since
know that you don't deserve that.
Well, as quote a proud American Jew is, my Jewishness or my Jewiness is very, very out there. Living in Southeast Michigan, which has a large concentration of Arab Americans, I feel very welcome here. I feel very much at home. And again, people certainly know that I'm Jewish. The difference is it's just a matter of a humanitarian perspective. I think it's a very simple litmus test. You don't condone genocidal actions. It's as simple as that. Everything else flows from there. Um, and I will tell you also that when I'm in Beirut, I also feel very much at ease. I feel very much at ease. It's a city where live and let live. They have all walks of life, all religions, all different types of people. Feel very much at home there as well. And so when you say, I think, and respectfully, a lot of Jews say, I don't feel safe. And the Jews that quote, don't feel safe,
Mm-hmm.
they're saying they don't feel safe. That's a projection. The reality is that they're not feeling safe while other people are being murdered. And I would say to my Jewish brothers and sisters that let's not confuse our own anxiety or feelings with what's going on in reality. Tikkun olam. Let's work on lifting up the world. Let's not be driven by our fear and our feelings of, oh no, what's going to happen to me? Let's look at what's going on and be real Jews and step up and fight for the oppressed. So that's my thought on that. When you say Jews are feeling isolated, I would say that that's.
I mean, because that's what they tell me, because I'm not projecting.
Yeah.
I'm listening to people.
Yeah, fair enough.
And so I'm like, okay, so how can I help? Is there anything I can say? Is there anything I can do? How can we be allies here? Because I don't want to see anyone feel like my foreparents felt, crouching in a corner when people are, when the KKK's marching on them and marching through the neighborhoods. I mean, that's a very real thing for Black Americans.
That's a real thing for Black Americans. In terms of being Jewish and in the United States, we have established ourselves. We are no longer the victims. We now have responsibility to take the privilege which we have worked for and earned and turns it toward making the United States a better place. And I'll say this, Santita, if there are people that you're in contact with who are Jewish or saying, I don't feel comfortable, please give them my number, have them reach out. Have them reach out. I'd love to talk to them and have because I've had those conversations with Jews who have been uncomfortable and in terms of, seeing the middle ground and being able to come together. Thank you. Yeah, cool.
No, I will do that. I mean, because as someone who's not Jewish, I can't help. All I can do is listen. And if you call me with that, I'm going to listen. Because you're my friend. I want to hear you out. Dwight, what are you hearing?
From?
Well, I mean, about where we are, because when we're having most of this conversation has been about what we're dealing with Iran and what could be World War III, quite frankly. They're trying to tamp that down. I'm like, I don't know how the Western Europeans and America and the people in the region cannot be involved. The interesting thing about that part of the world is that, Pastor Hatch, you hit Africa, Asia, and Europe. I mean,
Well, it
it's
won't be.
all right there.
It won't be World War III. It's going to be regional. It's
Mm,
because that's the area that the United States wants and Israel wants. Is they want region. The Israeli wants to control all of the Israeli land, so they secure it for the other Israelis, the other Zionists who's going to be looking for a home. And the United States want to control the land mass known as the Middle East because of the oil and the transportation and the waterways and the natural resources there. And so it won't be a world war. It won't be like World War III and World War II.
mm,
It'll be a regional war, and there will be certain countries that will be targeted, and certain countries that would be bought off and called and be on the western side. So a place like Saudi Arabia, they will be with the West on this, and Syria will be with with the Middle East. It's going to break down based on their own each country's own interest, and essentially who helped put the ruling class in power in those countries, whether they were put there by the British or put there by the United States. It's a very, very, very complicated situation, and that's why it's so hard to read, because half these countries have to play two ends against the middle, because they have to deal with the reality of the West, the reality of Israel, but they also have to deal with the reality of their Arab uh,
Street.
constituents, who most of them are on the side of the Palestinians. And so it's a great divide between the ruling class and the proletariat in most of those situations. Um, and so all of them are walking a very thin line, so that they themselves can maintain power, or they themselves don't get overthrown by their constituents, the constituents. Um, in terms of the United States politics and how they fit, is that the schism there is you have the same interest in many levels on the Republican side as you do on the Democratic side. And so that's I used that analysis the other day, is you got really it's two gangster families. It's like the Gambinos and
Genovese's.
the Genoveses fighting over territory. And so that's why I said the other day, it really don't matter if you have Al Capone or Frank Nitti running whatever family, is that the interests are the same. They just have competing interests for which family is going to be in charge and which family is going to be able to control those resources. And that's what you see when you look at the United States politics in it.
But
There's no major difference in terms of policy with where Biden is going to take us and where Trump is subject to take us.
And
Uh,
Kennedy.
and Kennedy is willing to take us.
Yes.
So you really have, families, competing families, crime families fighting over the same domain.
Pastor Hatch?
yeah, but I don't know that we can depend on this remaining a regional conflict. Just because the world is really due for a reset, and that's going to either be done by the next war or a long game. So so for example, you got China out there. They would prefer the long game, as would Iran. That's why Iran doesn't want war. They do better if they just let it play out, where they end up developing, the weaponry that they want to develop that they think is in their interest, rather than their stuff being taken out now while they're in the bunkers and not quite developed their nuclear program. So the problem is, if the U.S. becomes occupied in this region with Iran, with the conflagration that would happen all around that, with the allegiance that the Iranians and the Russians have, for example, as the Russians are destined probably to win in Ukraine in the short term or the long term, then when is the best time for China to think, let's get Taiwan now? See, that's how the global, that's why you can't control it. It's what makes it so dangerous. And it all started because what? You had this Cold War between Iran and Israel in the Middle East. Iran emerged as a regional power because of U.S. mistakes, which is the U.S. was trying to warn Israel up front. This stuff never works out completely like you want it to work out. Look at our example. When we took out Iraq and we neutralized countries that held Iran in check, it caused Iran to now emerge as a regional power with outsized influence, allies, the Houthis, Hezbollah, Hamas. And so it's the unpredictability of it. See, because I'm still seeing China over here on the other side looking to take Taiwan and its technical and industrial capacity, which would be the total game changer in its relationship with the power competition with the U.S.
Well,
and they will take, and they will,
that's how world wars happen. That's my point.
and they will take Taiwan. But one thing you can count on with America, Doc, is they ain't gonna fight nobody who can fight back. So they will let Taiwan go. That's the one thing you can depend on. Yeah, they're not gonna fight anybody who can fight. All their wars since World War I have been proxy wars. World War II, I'm sorry, have been proxy wars. They'll use other countries to fight other small countries, but they ain't gonna fight nobody who can fight back. They're not gonna attack Russia.
Everything in the Pacific. So it's not just Taiwan. It's the Philippines. It's Vietnam. It's Singapore, which are manufacturing powerhouses now.
And the United States will let all of them go.
Of influence. Go ahead.
And United States will let all of them go before they go to war with China.
Yeah, and the U.S. can't really fight on all them fronts. It's classic.
And they know
rise and fall of an empire. It's just too far stretched. Mm-hmm. And remember, all of this is on borrowed money with $21 trillion of debt.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly Chinese debt.
Yep, Chinese hold the notes.
They are the bankers.
And buying the property in Chicago, by the way.
No, not just here.
Yeah, but I mean, as a case in point.
All over a case in point, but I'm saying all over the country.
And especially if you've been to Africa lately, as I've been.
Yep.
All over the African continent, building railroads, built the OU and donated it to the African.
OAU. Well,
in Addis.
But they have a different relationship with the Africans. And I think that's why I said Ukraine was not going to work. I said, because you have to understand, the people in the global South relate to Russia very differently. Mm-hmm. They relate to China differently, and China relates to them differently. When the European powers came in on Africa, they got the women, they got them pregnant, they didn't marry them, blah, 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 blah. French were a little bit different, okay? But the Chinese are coming in differently. They're establishing families there. Mm-hmm. They're establishing a family beachheads in Africa.
They're bringing the community over. They're contained communities all over,
It's different. It's a different thing.
Simultaneously, as they're doing that, over here, you mentioned they hold our debt, right?
Yeah.
For your listeners, think about we keep on borrowing money from. They're very quietly no longer renewing that debt. So that money that we owe them, right? That they keep on, instead of actually extending it, they're slowly but calling in the credit line and slowly reining it in. So as you mentioned, they've created this world in Africa where they are part of the fabric now. You're absolutely right. They are part of the fabric, as well as the Russians too. Both
absolutely.
And America really. I mean, I know America's trying to catch up, but good luck.
They're way behind.
What you say? Good luck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is,
What did you say? Africa's gone?
And that it happened under Obama. It is just
Mhm.
it shows you how clueless that administration had to be
Well, I think they
when
thought
they had to. Yeah,
if they browned up imperialism, it would make it all right. It doesn't work. It doesn't, y'all. I'm here. We were coming here. I've got about 2 minutes or 3 minutes left. We were coming to talk about Trump. What did you say? Let the sideshow begin. Hurry, hurry, step right on in, Dwight. I know you can appreciate that. And you too,
it's a
Pastor.
sideshow.
The
Yeah,
blue magic. Ba, 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 da, ba, da, ba, ba, ba,
magic of
da.
the
Boom.
I,
Oh,
I,
yes.
I want to thank everyone for not making this show about Trump today. He gets enough airtime. I'm so happy to,
No, but thank
he gets
you. I
enough
mean, because
attention.
really, I think that helps. I think that'll help the audience because we've gotten caught up in the sideshow, and we need to understand what's happening with our debt. Why, and what is the significance of Taiwan? Where Africa is, the 22nd century is going to be the century of Africa, and these
BRICS.
people are getting prepared for it.
Hmm.
We are losing the coastal lines in the United States. They're being eaten up by the oceans, y'all. The the Mississippi River is significantly wider than it is on the maps that we see. When the folks go up to space, they go, wow, America doesn't look like this. The map this is off, y'all. Africa is many, many, many times the size that that is on the globe. I mean, there's a whole new world out here, and I just want Americans to understand that because when they deploy our troops, they see something else and they come back very angry because they know that they've been lied to.
And here's and
That-
here,
I want to give each of you
yeah.
really 30 seconds because I got to get out of here. Pastor Hatch.
No, I was just gonna say the next conversation we might need to talk about the the U.S. military
Oh.
being over a third plus African American, almost 42%. So when those soldiers were killed, they were black. And the reason why you have these black faces representing the American military, but the kind of instability that that's going to cause after a while, especially as this military is using more and more adventures overseas, and we find out that we have basically a mercenary force of people paid who had few economic options in the regular economy, and they ended up, paid the soldiers for hire. African American women being the most outsized
Mhm.
demographic in the
Well,
U.S. military.
and they're protecting the mercenaries. They get over there and they realize I'm protecting the mercenaries, and they come back very upset about that. 30 seconds, really 30, Josh.
So I'm going to cede my time because I'm just happy to be here and learned a lot today in terms of, and I really like the call out about in the region that we're over here, that China and the other people are there making their play in terms of, okay, this is our moment. How do we change? They're slowly changing the dynamic, but you're right. We're coming to an impasse where things are going to shift overnight at some point. We'll see. We'll
It's,
see.
it's already shifted. Now Samsung is number one, not Apple.
Interesting.
That news just came out today. It was like, and when you get to an African country, Dwight, landed in Kenya. The wall was Samsung. This was like 10 or 15 years ago. Samsung had gangstered the continent. I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just we're not aware of what's going on. Dwight, 30 seconds.
And don't disregard brick in all of this. Is that
Mhm.
as they uh the take themselves out of off the dollar, and the United States lose the power of its currency, it's going to also shuffle the deck in all of this. So there's a lot of dynamics that are playing into that are coming into play that we'll see as they play themselves out. So
Mhm.
the United States today, as you was talking about the climate,
Mhm.
the economy is going in 5 years now. It's going to be a much different economy
Mhm.
worldwide than it is today, as this brick phenomenon plays itself out.
I mean, and while they're playing these games in Washington, I mean, this is not working. And we need to start asking questions. In the prior segment, everybody, please check out the first hour. We talked about the free and equal elections. And I want you to get and really to find out about the debates, Free and Equal Elections Foundation, because we have got to have everybody who wants these jobs. They need to come and debate before us. They need to talk to us. And we talked about that. Josh, I want you to meet them. And Pastor Hatch, you got to meet them. You got to meet them, Dwight, because this young woman, Christina Tobin, comes out of Chicago. Her father ran for office and he was kicked off, but he had 10 times the number of signatures he needed, but he couldn't get on the ticket. Mr. Tobin, years ago. So she's doing great work, but you all are doing great work. And thank you for this provocative conversation and helping me to realign. Because, I was told, you can talk about Trump all day. And I said, I really don't want to do that. And the Lord kept moving my show in another direction. And I'm so grateful that I listened. Hallelujah. God bless you, everybody. I'll see you tomorrow on the Santita Jackson